Welcome to this video from LOF Clutches. Today we're going to show you how to fit the LOF POWERmaster. This POWERmaster fits all Defender and series. Basically, if you look into your engine bay, if you've got a clutch master cylinder that looks like this, it will fit. So, what comes in a master cylinder? In a master cylinder, you get the master cylinder, you get a nice aluminium anodized lid, which is a nice feature, and you get some nuts and some washers for fitting. Now, the idea behind the POWERmaster is to make the pedal lighter. It works really well with the power spring, and basically it can be fitted with or without the spring to any Defender or series. And yeah, so far we've had some awesome results, some awesome feedback. Right, so fitting the LOF POWERmaster. First of all, you're going to need to open the engine bay and locate the clutch pedal box, like so. Next, you're going to want to take a Phillips screwdriver and undo the 6 screws on top of the pedal box assembly, and you'll be able to remove the metal plate and the gasket. Put those to one side, and then you're going to end up with something that looks like this. Next, you want to take the appropriate size spanner and disconnect the union. This feeds the clutch pipe, so this is the high pressure end. So you want to remove this using the suitable spanner or your fingers if it's loose. So you can remove that and remove the pipe to one side. You need to be very careful to note how many copper washers are on either side of the bolt. So for example, this one is an older style, so this will have 1 copper washer. The later TD5 and Pumas will have 2 copper washers underneath, and then the banjo bolt, and then 1 copper washer above. So remove the pipe and leave it like this. Next up, you're going to want to take a 13mm spanner or 1/2 inch. We've actually modified this one, it's just a cheap one. We've ground the flats on it to make it super easy for fitting the master cylinders. Obviously, if you've got a spare one, feel free to do the same. If not, don't grind your snap on one, because, well, it's up to you. Then you'll be faced with a nylon nut on the end here. So the first thing you're going to want to do is undo the nylon nut that will be here. This hasn't got one fitted. And simply remove that and let it drop. You can either try and catch it with your fingers, or you can let it drop into the footwell. Nice and easy. So this is obviously inside, so it could just drop into the footwell. Once you've done that, you're next going to want to undo these 2 bolts that hold the master cylinder to the pedal box. Now, when this is in the car, it's a bit more fiddly. I like to use a swan neck spanner, like so, and I always start with the bottom bolt because it's the hardest to get to, and so this one's easy, this one's not so easy. If you imagine that's in the engine bay like that, I like to use a swan neck spanner on the 13mm here, like that, and you can normally just let that rest onto the footwell, on the bulkhead side. And then you want to take your 10mm spanner and go inside the cab and position it onto the head of the bolt and undo like so. So obviously it's quite fiddly to get that bottom one. You can sometimes get it from the top, but I find it easier from the actual pedal, from the footwell. And start by undoing that bolt. Alternatively, you can have someone hold the footwell side tight like that, and then use a ratchet spanner on this side to undo the nut. The bolts go this way with a 10mm head and a 13mm head here. So in an ideal world, you want to be able to ratchet that like that until it's loose, and you should just be able to spin it off with your fingers. And then the top one, same again. You might want to use a swan neck 10mm or a normal 10mm in there like so, and then crack this one off. This one's nice and easy to get to, like that. And when it becomes loose, you'll be able to, you might need to compress the master because you might be working against a little bit of force, and you'll be able to unscrew the second nut and bolt, like so. Now you can either hold on to those, or you can let them drop into the footwell, like so. So they'll either stay in there like this, or they will fall into the footwell. Either way, you're not going to lose them really. And if you have lost them, they'll be down the back of the pedal, easy to get to. Once you've done that, you end up with the pedal box as it stands. Right, so you take the new Powermaster, like so, wind the nuts all the way to the end of the thread, and take the M8 washer, like so, and thread it onto the end of the nuts. Now, it's worth me saying at this point, the pedal box can stay in the vehicle. You don't need to take it out. You can leave it as it sits in the bulkhead and actually fit the Powermaster as is. So once you've done that, you take the master cylinder and you pass it into there like that, into the pedal. So it should look something like that. And then you want to extend the pedal all the way down and start as you did before, putting the top nut in like so. Bolt, that was a bolt, not a nut. Get the first one in, that makes it super easy, like so. Now, maybe worth mentioning here, to get this in with the bulkhead sat here, you may need to compress the master cylinder in order to get it in, but you should be able to do that. You compress it down and put it in. Obviously, it's just not easy to show you that in the vehicle, that's why we're doing it on the bench. Once you've done that, you're then going to want to bring the pedal up, like so. That's a lie. You're going to want to leave the pedal down, like so that you can get the lower bolt in. So normally, like that, and up into the pedal box. You might need a bit of wiggling to put the second bolt in like that. Then take your nut and spin that onto the master. Like so. Then take your 10mm spanner onto the underside and a ratchet spanner on this side and tighten that up. Same on the top. 10mm spanner in there, 13 ratchet on there, and nip that up like so. So that is now secured into the pedal box, like that. Next, you're going to want to take the rubber bung out of the master cylinder. Keep that in there for as long as possible so that no dirt and debris goes in there. Then take your banjo bolt or your copper pipe, depending on what vehicle you've got, and thread that into the master cylinder like so, ensuring that you've got the copper washers in the correct place. This doesn't have any copper washers in it, like that. So you can tighten that up, and that just wants to be suitably nipped. It doesn't want to be too tight. You don't want to don't overkill it, but give it a good nip with a spanner. Sizes for this, 5/8 on Puma, I believe, or 16mm does the trick. This one I think is 9/16, so 14mm, 14.5. Use a 15mm spanner if you haven't got the right size. Next, you're going to want to extend the pedal so it's all the way down, like this. You might want to wedge it down using a bar between the pedal and the footwell. Once it's wedged down, you're going to take the M8 T-nut, which is slightly thinner than a normal M8, and put it onto the push rod, like so. So we're going to spin that on there. Now, this wants to be just on the very end of the threaded rod. So we're going to turn this round. Now, the other problem you might come up against is that it spins. And if it spins, what you can do is you can take a pair of long nose mole grips onto the rod there And it doesn't need to be too tight, just hold them tight like that. That was a bit too tight probably. Then take your 13mm spanner or your modified spanner and just nip up the nylock so that it is flush with the end of the push rod. So as you can see there, the blue end of the nylock is flush with the end of the push rod. You can then release your mole grip like so. Let the pedal flip the hole the other way, and then you want to wind the 2 lock nuts down. And you're probably going to do some adjusting with this, so it doesn't need to be overly tight. So I'll just nip the first one up like so. It is fiddly, and you might need a different size spanner or a special spanner like we've got. So once that's tight on there, we will then feel that you've got the pressure of the master cylinder doing the work. Next up, you're going to want to unscrew the lid of the master cylinder like so and fill the reservoir with brake fluid. We suggest DOT4. Fill the master cylinder with brake fluid, and then you can actually just start by pumping slowly the pedal down. Top tip for you, 4 strokes of the pedal empties the master cylinder. So after every 3 strokes, you want to run round and fill it up. And then once you've done that, you'll be able to remove a lot of the air just using that principle. So you then want to go down to your slave cylinder, either like this on the TD5 and the TDI in the series, or like this on the TDCI, and you want to bleed the system. Obviously the Puma's got the half turn knob, which is really easy. With this one, you're going to need a 10 or 11mm spanner to crack the bleed pipe, using a length of hose to bleed as per normal, like you were bleeding brakes or like you were bleeding a clutch system. And once it's bled up, you then want to get in the vehicle, start the vehicle up out of gear, and then try selecting gears, and hopefully you'll be able to clear the gearbox, clear the clutch plate. If you may need to, what you'll find is with this in this position like this, the pedal will be quite high in the cab. So you may, once you've bled the system, depending on how worn the pedal box is and depending on how worn the clutch is, you will then be able to lower the pedal height and bring the pedal down the push rod, which will then lower the pedal height. But to start with, when you're bleeding the system, you want it at the very end like this. So start with it like this, bleed the system. Once you've got a good clutch clearance, you can then begin to lower these down the push rod and take it for a drive, put the lid back on, take it for a drive, take your spanner with you, and then you can slowly adjust this down and get it to the usable height. Once you're happy with it, put the 6 screws back in, put the plate on, and check everything's tight. Job's a good one. So now you've fitted the PowerMaster and you've bled it up, you should have a good, really light working pedal. Now, a few things just in case, a few troubleshooting issues. Firstly, if the clutch doesn't clear, that will either be down to air in the system or the clutch is too new. We suggest only fitting this when the clutch has already been bedded in, 3,000 miles. Or it could be that the pedal is set too low and you're not getting enough stroke on the pedal. So check all of those things. If you end up with the pedal losing pressure, you need to check this banjo bolt here. You want to check that the copper washers are in the correct place and that they're nipped up tightly. We've seen it before where a bad connection here can lead to a loss in pressure, air getting into the system. And the final thing to say is with the PowerMaster fitted, if you've got a spring like this, either an LOF power spring or a normal over center spring, you might find that the pedal actually sticks in the down position. Now, to overcome this, what you need to do is wind the 17mm bump stop bolt inwards, which you'll find in the engine bay. Wind that inwards, and that prevents the pedal from sticking down. And that is that. Feel free to like, comment and subscribe for some more LOF